For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
On social media, celebratory birthday messages poured in almost 4 decades after his death. Recognized in 2011 as one of Time magazine's top 25 political icons, he was known by followers as King of Kings, Conquering Lion of Judah, and Elect of God. This was Tafari Makinen, better known as Haile Selassie I, Ethiopia's last emperor, who ruled between 1930 and 1974. In 1936, he was forced into exile after Italy invaded Ethiopia.
The Charter of the United Nations expresses the noblest aspirations of man.
A month later, Selassie addressed the League of Nations in Geneva, asking for assistance. Even though it went down in history as one of the greatest speeches of the 20th century, he failed to get the support he needed. Later, Britain came to his aid, and Selassie was able to return to his homeland in 1941. Selassie didn't just contribute to Ethiopia's politics, but became instrumental in Africa's quest for independence. During his 4-decade rule, Selassie greatly strengthened schools and the police, gave Ethiopia a modern constitution, established the Organization for African Unity with Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah, and became its first president. So revered was he that the Rastafarian religion derived its name from Selassie's original name, Ras, meaning Prince Tafari. But by the early 1970s, famine, unemployment, and failure to adapt to the modern world began to undermine Selassie's rule. Human Rights Watch criticized him for ruling in a repressive and undemocratic manner. 4 years later, he was ousted. Selassie died the following year under mysterious circumstances. In 1992, the late emperor's remains were discovered buried under a toilet in the imperial palace. Forensic experts believe he was murdered. In 2000, Selassie received a proper burial when his body was laid to rest in Addis Abeba's Trinity Cathedral. Shanae Hale, Johannesburg.
You deserve to know more. ENCA.com.
You know, with Ken Booth, singing praises to Rastafari. That's how we started the program tonight. And, and of course, we heard a speech on a little snippet. His Majesty speaking to the youth of Africa and in the African diaspora. And we now back with the mystic revelation. Count Ozzy, the mystic revelation of Rastafari, before we make our first link. Ozzy and the mystic revelation of Rastafari. Count Ozzy was one of the first Rastafari who bring the Rastafari culture into mainstream Jamaican music. Yeah, the late, great Count Ozzy. So as we say, we're celebrating the commemoration, the 86th anniversary of the crowning of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie and Empress Menen. And there are a number of activities taking place starting tonight. And we're going to make a number of linkages to the various Bingy houses who are hosting events. And the first one we're going to link up with is the man named over Bull Bay, the Ethiopia Africa Black International Congress Church of Salvation. Them start them celebration earlier tonight in 10 miles of Bull Bay. Of course, Bull Bay, the original Rastafari community, Yeah. And we gather that the celebration will continue for 7 days and festivities. But to tell us more, we have Honorable Priest Rudolph Bailey online. Hello, greetings.
Oh, blessed love, honorable my Lord, glorify another Prophet Hasfal.
Yes, I give a thanks.
Most natural, my Lord, glorify and honor the eye.
Every time, man, honor too. So, Anna will link you up to give us a update as to your event over there in 10 miles Bull Bay. Give us an update as to what happened so far and what is happening as we speak.
Yes, Honorable. Right now, the Nyabingi service is going on. And you might hear in the background, the priests and the prophets and everyone singing and music in the background. We started at about, from 3:30 this afternoon. That's when we usually start. But we started a little later today, this evening. But we are fully occupied now, services in full swing.
Yeah, so we gotta know you'll be having 7 days of festivities. You want to talk to us about that?
Festivities.
Yes.
It's not really so much of festivities, Honorable Prophet. It's more, reasoning and, hymns and choruses, to our Father and praise Selassie, It's more the churchical aspect of things going on here.
All right. Talk to us about, daily, throughout the next week, daily what... will it be continuous? Will it be monotonous? Will it be the same thing every day over and over?
No, Honorable. There are hundreds of choruses and hymns that we sing. So we don't sing the same hymns and choruses over. And, 7 priests on the altar most of the times, and they don't chant the same thing. They don't repeat each other. They all have their own verses or their own hymns or whatever, their own words that they come up with. But, it's all to the commemoration or, it's towards the coronation of His Imperial Majesty.
Yeah, so the music provided by Daniel's #1 band. Tell us about that.
Yes, that if you listen carefully, the band is playing in the background while the priest is chanting on the altar. So, right now, the Daniel's #1 band is playing. I don't know if you can pick it up, you're hearing it.
Yeah, man, we're hearing it, man, clearly.
Okay, good. So I don't have to go any nearer then.
Yeah, man, we're good. So, the anniversary celebrations, how important is it for your house, the Ethiopia Africa Black International Congress? How important is it? Why you keep celebrating each year?
Yes, it is not only for the host, it is for the universal earth of black people, black Israelites, because it's their king who was crowned in 1930. And, so that is something that, all of us, the whole nation, the whole race, should be proud of, because our God and King is black. Most times. Selassie, Rastafari. So that is what we are proud of, and that is why we keep, celebrating annually, to show the importance of such an event. In 1930, when 72 nations, from all over the world came to Ethiopia and crowned our God and King, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. That hasn't happened in Ethiopia the way in which it was done for centuries, since Melinek. So, that is an important landmark and something for not only the Ethiopia Africa Black International Congress to be proud of, but all black people, universal internationally, who are conscious of themselves.
So, I want to give thanks, and keep the fire burning. And, of course, we'll be updated as throughout the week on your activities over there. You're so blessed. Give thanks.
Oh, thank you very much for your call and, for your time.
Yeah.
And we do appreciate, what you have done.
Yeah, man. Not a problem, man. Our thing this. All right?
Yes, Honorable. And all blessings today,
Yeah, man.
Keep up the good work,
Yes, I. Give a thanks here.
Glorify and honor. Give thanks.
Respect. All right. That was Honorable Priest Rudolph Bailey over there in 10 miles Bull Bay, the Ethiopia Africa Black International Congress Church of Salvation, starting them celebrations tonight for 7 days in commemoration of the 86th anniversary of the coronation and crowning of His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie and Empress Menen. All right, so we keep up. We're there with you, and it's the same thing gonna go throughout the night. So this is Ura, Yeah. Part of our ongoing efforts to improve service to their customers, the Jamaica Public Service Company, JPS, will need to suspend electricity supply in order to carry out maintenance work tomorrow, Thursday, November 3, between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. in the following areas of St. Andrew. These are Guava Gap, Dublin Castle, Flamstead, Content, Mount Charles, Westphalia, Big Hill, Robertsfield, Salt Hill, Guava Ridge, and Gordon Town to Mavis Bank and surrounding areas. JPS apologizes for the inconvenience caused by this outage scheduled for Thursday, November 3 between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. Every effort will be made to restore supply to these areas of St. Andrew as soon as possible. Yes, so we are celebrating the 86th anniversary of the coronation of His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie, and his Empress Menen. And the cutting edge tonight is celebrating that and Rastafari heritage, culture, philosophy, and thought as well throughout the program. And we are making linkages with the respective bingy houses them who are hosting events in celebration and commemoration of this historic and great event. We join Ras Ivai now. I think he's over there, the pit for Nyabingi Center. Greetings, Ras Ivai.
Blessings and love.
Yeah, man, how you doing?
You know, good, Reggie, big thanks.
Yeah, man, good to have you, man.
Yes, man, just like how I good to have your daddy in our presence at the Bingi for the grand coronation.
Yeah, him the near you there?
Well, I know I don't see him because you know the center all around,
yeah.
But we reason earlier, but him still there. Huh?
Yeah, man, I know him there, man. Him now left till most of Friday.
Yeah, man, I tell you, Rastad, it was good that he's here because first night was a blessing, you know, it was the eve of the grand coronation. So
yes.
At the Pittsford Nyabingi Center now we had over 60 students from University of the West Indies with rashes from all over coming in, the ones from USC and all around, coming into the Nyabingi Center for this very auspicious occasion, this royal, you know, commemoration of the 86th anniversary.
Yes.
So it has been blessed. It's a great occasion. It actually sealed up for I and I now the triple crowning in the Jubilee year of Rastafari.
Yes.
You know, we declared this year being the 50th anniversary visit of His Majesty as a Jubilee year of Rastafari. And then we did the high liberation for the 3 crownings. You know, on the 27th of September, 1916, the Jasmat Tafari became Rastafari.
Yes.
And then on the 7th of October, 1928, Rastafari became Negus Tafari. And on the 2nd of November, this day, 86 years ago, Negus Tafari became Haile Selassie I, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, conquering Lion of the tribe of Judah, King of Zion, King of Israel, Emperor of Ethiopia. So it's there for a great occasion, and it has been awesome so far. Just imagine the Nyabingi with 60-odd students. You know, when we talk about students from the University of the West Indies,
yes,
coming in, you talk students from all over the world, from England, from Trinidad, from the different Caribbean regions, North America, and all. Just coming in. I mean, the only alarming thing, you know, is that predominantly female. We have to wait. When a young man them there at the level, kind of frightening, but you know, we still give thanks. The daughters are there doing tertiary education and came into a night vigil. So you know that maximize the congregation. You know, with our influx of ones coming in, with a 60-yard coming in, you know how that is the diabetes center. So we had an all-night reasoning. The firelighting ceremony was awesome. We had the 7 prayers. We had Psalm 101. I know Psalm 101, say, those who don't know, was the psalm that Emperor Haile Selassie I read on his coronation day of his own choosing. You know, so if you want to, let us read Psalm 101. Because it tells of his commitment to governance and all, you know.
Yeah.
So we had that, and we had the 7 Psalms, and that went well, and it came down with a shower of blessing as a cleansing, and that didn't deter ones from completing the 7 Psalms. The students stood around too, and then we had a nice feeling up then to the tabernacle. The rain subsided, and the drums and the chant continued, and the reasoning, because here then you have students now who came to understand why the grand coronation, and it's important to Rastafari people and to African people and to the people of the world.
To world history.
The entire history.
Exactly.
Why did representative of all the monarchies of the world at the time send their representative to a remote corner in Africa?
Some of them were there themselves.
To be represented there.
Yeah, some of them were there themselves.
Exactly. Prince Eugene from Italy, Count Metaxas of Greece, the Duke of Gloucester, and all these representatives of friendly powers during that time were in Ethiopia to pay homage to the crowning of a black king, a black queen, and a black prince, hence a royal family. You know, so that was phenomenal for an event like that to happen. In a time when you talk about 1930, I talk about race, hatred, and prejudice.
Yes, and the carving up of Africa them time there. So Africa was in a splinters them time there.
Exactly. Checkerboarded by all the colonialist powers. The only flag flying high was Ethiopia. You know, so to find that happening in 1930, you know, to see these representatives sitting beside the Ethiopian races and dignitaries in that ceremony in Addis Ababa at St. George's Cathedral. St. George's Cathedral couldn't even hold the influx of ones who came for this grand occasion. So they had to have 2 great tents outside where the throne of Emperor and Empress was laid there. And then just to sit for over 6 hours. Look, I remember, 49 devout priests and from the most holy churches of what we call Christianity, the most ancient Christianity. We had the Judo-Coptic Abuna Krilios coming to Ethiopia as head of the church to lay the crown upon the head of His Imperial Majesty, and just to sit in that drunk gathering and to hear the priest, each priest to present one of the 7 symbols of the coronation, having reading psalms that pertain to each symbol. You know, the youths were elated to find that when the sword of Solomon was to be presented to the emperor, a priest read from Psalm 45. Gird thy sword upon thy thigh, O thou most mighty, in thy glory and thy majesty. When he was to receive the golden scepter, the symbol of his imperial power, another priest read from another verse in Psalm 45 that said, Thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. The scepter of thy kingdom is a righteous scepter. This was new knowledge to many of these youths who did not realize how sacred that that occasion was 1930.
Yeah.
You know, and when we point out the fact that National Geographic magazine, which is one of the world's renowned magazines, the writer, Minister Information, the writers and those, and the soldiers and those who wrote these articles, when they say for a moment the centuries seem to have slipped back into biblical times, it shows how sacred the moment was and how prophetic it was, because the emperor, with all these symbols, there was a psalm, a prophecy that pertaining to what was happening. When the triple crown was placed on his head, they read from Psalm 21, thou settest a crown of pure gold upon his head. All this happened before the eyes of the world. And, you know, as a people, we say, wow. You know, Louis Farrakhan once said, you know, as a child coming up, we hear about white monarchies and all. But when he went to Ethiopia and see the whole history of Ethiopia and said, wow, we as black people must be proud to know that we as Africans have great kings and queens that even surpass these kings and queens that we hear about that were European.
Yeah, man.
You know, so when we look at Haile Selassie, we say, wow.
Yeah.
We can be proud.
Definitely.
To know that, yes,
definitely.
we have our king.
Good place on which to end. Good place on which to end Rasaiva. You know, the program kind of tight because we link up all over.
Yes, man. We
give thanks for the knowledge. Give thanks for the knowledge you just passed on a while ago because enough away, you know, enlightened by it. And, you know, we just know say Pit 4 is one of the places to be right now.
Yeah, man. I mean, and the gathering continues for 7 days, so one can keep coming in because the gathering is been intensified as we go forward. So we give thanks for the link, and we just trust that our people can be wise up to the things that is what make us who we are. We have a glorious history, and we have to be proud of it. So we give thanks, Roger.
Yeah, man. I give thanks, man, and bless up yourself and heal up Jafrank when you see him and tell them so we're up on here so you can tune in anytime.
Love and blessing, Rastafari.
All right, Selassie. That was Ras Ivai, yeah, man, over there at Pit 4, Nyabingi Center in Granville, St. James. And the celebrations continue, the 86th anniversary of the coronation of Jah Rastafari.
Get my weed, Rastafari. Got my weed, I just Christos. Lift them up, my rock, sad.
Coronation 6 years of Ethiopia. And, you know, coming up next, we're going to have a little documentary, you know, a documentary on this man. We're going to find out in this documentary about this man and the significance of his role in the history of the world and world affairs. And this documentary going to tell us, it was done actually around 50 years ago or so. And it takes you from way back down through the birth of Rastafari to his ascension to the crown, through the time of the troubles when Italy invaded Ethiopia, and to his speech at the League of Nations, and his role in forming the Africa Union, now known as the Africa Union, and the significance of all those and his role in world history. So we start that documentary now. Not long, but, you know, you're going to learn a lot from this documentary. So this is the cutting edge on IRA FM.
For the appearance of a living legend. Ministers of government, ambassadors and their wives, princes of the church. By now they've probably lost count of the number of times they've waited here at Addis Ababa airport for the same extraordinary man. In a moment he'll step from the door of this aircraft to a scene that's even more familiar to him. And here he comes. The legend in person. One of the world's best known figures and faces, and one that most of us know least about. father figure of modern Africa and relic of a vanishing world, feudal despot and reforming monarch, one of the last claimants to the divine right of kings, the legendary descendant of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. His Imperial Majesty, Haile Selassie I, conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, elect of God, King of kings, Emperor of Ethiopia. Long ago, Haile Selassie celebrated his 40th anniversary as emperor, and his own people of Ethiopia came to do him honor. But Haile Selassie in his time has been far more than just the ruler of a small African state. He's become one of the great survivors of our day and of yesterday, riding out in shrewd triumph all that the 20th century could throw at him. Today, Haile Selassie is courted by all the world. At his anniversary reception, the representatives of 100 nations came to salute the authority of this tiny old man. He was probably the first African leader to be treated by white men as an equal, and the first to be sacrificed by them in the name of appeasement. He's learned to trust nobody, except perhaps his dog, and yet he's won the respect of the world. For there's no man alive today whose life has spanned so much. Now, in his old age, he's practically the incarnation of the history of our time. Time began for Haile Selassie in this remote corner of the Horn of Africa in 1892. In London, Queen Victoria had celebrated her Golden Jubilee. In Africa, the colonial powers were carving up the continent. But the world Haile Selassie was to grow up to had not been dreamed of. He was born in a thatched hut and christened Tafari Makonnen. And though he was of Ethiopia's royal blood, his childhood on these hillsides was as carefree as childhood should be. Ethiopia to the world then was not much more than an African fairy tale. In European romance, it was the land of King Solomon's mines, Prester John and the Queen of Sheba, the place called Abyssinia, where the tribe of the Habashan was supposed to live. Only a handful of foreigners had reached its interior and found among its mountains the source of the Blue Nile. The rest was as dark as anything in darkest Africa, hidden by giant mountains from the deadly curiosity of the world. But Europe's romance was Ethiopia's living history. There was a rich empire here when most of Europe was in darkness 2,000 years ago. Its ruins still stand at Aksum, its first capital. And the title of its first rulers, King of Kings, is that of Haile Selassie today. The empire's history since then is a rich confusion of fact and legend. There are still 50,000 people like these in Ethiopia who call themselves Jews of the House of Israel and claim descent from the first Jews out of Arabia 3,000 years ago. They observe the Jewish Sabbath and mark their pottery with the Star of David. Like Haile Selassie's imperial crest, the star crowns the Lion of Judah, the central Ethiopian symbol, begotten from Sheba, who bore a son to King Solomon and called him Menelik, the first Ethiopian emperor. But the central tradition of Ethiopia is Christianity. Long before most of Europe was converted, the empire was a pillar of Christendom, whose emperor earned another title that Haile Selassie carries today, the elect of God. The echoes of 16 centuries of Christianity sound with undiminished faith through Ethiopia's churches now. The church in Ethiopia was a sort of barbaric Byzantium, and a crusading church as well, bestowing the light of Christ upon the heathen tribes. But like other crusaders, it was beset by the growing power of Islam. From over the Red Sea, the Arabs swept into Africa with their own revelation. Soon, Ethiopia was a Christian stronghold surrounded by the Muslim world. Hidden in the mountains from the Muslim invasion, the emperors and priests of Ethiopia kept the Christian faith alive. Here in the 12th century, the Emperor Lalibela carved out of the rock the churches of what he hoped would be a New Jerusalem. It was the empire's capital for 100 years and came to be known as Lalibela after its creator. 800 years later, Haile Selassie was to come here to pray for deliverance from Italy's invasion of his country. At the worst moment of his life, it was his way of declaring his ultimate faith in the God who was so essential to his empire's tradition. A tradition that the monks of Lalibela still voice in a haunting mixture of orthodox plain chant and African rhythm. In the long struggle with Islam, church and state became inseparable, and the Christian powers of Europe sent emissaries to the emperors to help them against the Muslims. One of them may have been Prester John, some Western Father Jean perhaps, exiled and forgotten here for a lifetime. But in spite of Western help, many of the empire's provinces were overrun. The emperors themselves became nomads, wandering the highlands from camp to camp, until here at Gondar in the 17th century, they came to rest again in renewed splendor. These castles of Gondar are unique in Africa. Probably some Portuguese helped to build them. Possibly Indian craftsmen were brought in. But they're a sign of Ethiopia's special distinction in Africa as a place where the non-African world made some early mark on the continent. Gondar was only a brief revival of a declining empire. In another 100 years, the court was on the march again, still carrying the Christian banner, but challenged at every step by powerful feudal barons, as the kings of medieval England used to be. Only the church held Ethiopia together, and gradually authorities shifted again towards the church strongholds in the central mountains. Here, the empire that Haile Selassie would inherit began to take shape, under King Haile Selassie, his great-grandfather. King Sahle was one of the most powerful barons, and it was to him that the new commercial empires of 19th century Europe came with their gifts and guns. And his kingdom was the foundation on which the Ethiopian empire was rebuilt. Its revival was heralded by a Christian crusade, led by a man who was half monk, half warrior, and who defeated all other contenders for the throne, the Emperor Theodore. But in 1862, Theodore fell foul of Queen Victoria. By a misunderstanding, she failed to answer one of his letters, and in a huff, Theodore imprisoned a British consul and some European missionaries in his mountain fortress at Magdala. When 5 years of diplomacy failed to secure their release, the British at last sent a military expedition to recover them. It was a ponderous exercise, but effective. With elephants, gun carriages, and Indian sepoys under the command of General Napier, they clambered steadily into the mountains that had been Ethiopia's best defense for so long. The Ethiopians were no match for them. They had few rifles and no artillery to save their old empire from the new world. As Napier's army approached their last stronghold, Theodore shot himself. The new concept of empire had triumphed over the old.
Reggae Radio, Irie FM.
Yet in Theodore's medieval crusade, there was a glimpse of a new Ethiopia. And 20 years later, under the Emperor Menelik, grandson of Haile Selassie and half-uncle to Haile Selassie, that glimpse became something like reality. Europe's scramble for Africa was then in full swing, and as the Western empires planted their flags all over the continent, only Menelik's Ethiopia seemed able to stand against them. At Addis Ababa in Haile Selassie's old kingdom, Menelik created a new capital for his empire. It was Ethiopia's first permanent capital since the heyday of Gondar, 200 years before. Menelik's palace is still used 80 years later by Haile Selassie, and to him it's a permanent reminder of the day when Ethiopia showed that it could, after all, resist the power of Europe, when Menelik's army in these mountains defeated an Italian invasion at the Battle of Adwa. The year was 1896, and the traditional Ethiopian painting tells the story of a modern awakening. It was the first time a European army had been defeated by Africans since Hannibal beat the Romans 2,000 years ago. Menelik's celebrations were huge and noisy. For days on end, the drink ran like water, and the tables were red with the blood of raw meat. In the rejoicing, the Ethiopians hardly noticed that they had still to pay a price for their independence. From now on, they would be enmeshed in the quarrels of the European powers. While the new ambassadors and their lady wives looked with astonishment at Menelik's medieval feasts, they were secretly seeking for allies here in the power struggle that was raging in Europe. Into this strange twilight world between yesterday and today, Haile Selassie was born. Now, after 80 years, he looks back on a lifetime that has spanned the gap between the 2,000 years of African tradition he inherited and our own jet-propelled international revolution that threatens to overwhelm him. One of his earliest memories is of the way our world first encroached on his, with the arrival in Ethiopia of the first British diplomatic mission to the court of his half-uncle Menelik. He was 5 years old. The year was 1897, just a year after the great victory of Adwa, and the British mission on its way to Addis Ababa stayed with the young Haile Selassie's father in the town of Harar. Harar then was a newly conquered province of Menelik's empire, taken from Muslim hands. Haile Selassie's father, Ras Makonnen, was Menelik's governor for Harar and a favorite to succeed to the throne. In Muslim hands, Harar had been a secret city, closed to non-Muslims for centuries. 40 years earlier, the British explorer Richard Burton had only been able to get here disguised as an Arab. He didn't think much of what he saw. The streets were stony and narrow, the faces were stern and secretive. He thought they justified the local proverb, hard as the heart of Harar. Harar's not a great deal better now, but for what change there is, Haile Selassie's father can take some credit. He allowed French priests to open this little mission school in the town and sent his son, Tafari Makonnen, to learn from them. 70 years later, French is still the only foreign language Haile Selassie speaks with any fluency. Today, the school is little changed, but in coming here as a boy, Haile Selassie recalls that he had an advantage given to very few others in the empire at that time, and he's been obsessed with the value of education ever since. His father is remembered by Haile Selassie as an unusually enlightened man. He built Harar's first hospital. He opened the first Ethiopian state school. And because he knew he might one day become emperor himself, and that Tafari would succeed him, he tried to prepare his son as best he could for the changes that he knew were bound to come from the traditional ways of the old world to the revolutionary demands of the new. So, throughout his boyhood, the young Tafari lived happily in his father's house, with a future that seemed secure. But suddenly, his father died, and Tafari passed at once from security into a world of medieval intrigue. He was only 13. Menelik was dying, paralyzed by a stroke. He had no son of his own, and with Ras Makonnen's death, the last chance of a clear succession had gone. His court was racked with the jealous plots of rivals for his throne. There was Taitu, his aging queen. Zauditu, his daughter, equally determined to get the throne herself. Ras Michael, a powerful provincial warlord, scheming to put his dissolute son and Menelik's nephew, Lijiasu, on the throne. Against such plotters, the young Tafari had no chance. He was exiled as governor of another conquered province. Meanwhile, Menelik's palace seethed with treachery and murder like the household of some African King Lear. For 5 years, the conspiracies tore the court apart, until in 1911, the doddering Menelik at last revealed his choice. Ras Michael's son, Lijiasu, was the heir to his throne. The Queen and his daughter were thrust aside, and Tafari Makonnen joined Ethiopia's other barons in swearing an oath of loyalty to his rival. As a reward, he was sent to his father's old job as governor of Harar. In Harar, Tafari was safely out of the way, a week's journey from the capital. He was just 19, but he was experienced far beyond his years. Already he knew not only how to run a province, but how to play a waiting game, and he knew there was still a crown to play for. He needed all his caution, because when Menelik died at last, and Li Jiasu was crowned, the new emperor was already half mad with syphilis, turning from youthful dissipation to exotic vice and murder. He tried to murder Tafari on this lake near Harar, where Tafari often went boating with friends. This time, Li Jiasu bribed a servant to hold the boat so that it sank in the middle of the lake. The friend was drowned. Tafari survived by swimming ashore. The foreign embassies dabbled in these plots as well. The new diplomats who'd surrounded Menelik now imposed on these medieval intrigues the shape of approaching war in Europe. Germany and Turkey stood with Li Jiasu. Britain, France, and Italy swung to Tafari's side. It was 1914, and as the guns opened up on Europe's western front 4,000 miles away, the contest in Ethiopia took an older shape. Christianity once again prepared for a clash with Islam. A Muslim empire in Africa was the bait dangled before Li Jiasu by Germany and Turkey. And in his craze for power, the new ruler of a Christian empire became a Muslim in all but name. For the Christians, it was the last straw. Vice, murder, and rape they were accustomed to, but apostasy struck at the heart of their tradition. Li Jiasu was formally excommunicated from the Ethiopian church, and with British encouragement, Tafari was proclaimed regent with the title of Ras, or prince. He was 24 years old. Zauditu, Menelik's daughter, was crowned empress at the same time. But the struggle was unfinished. Li Jiasu was still free, and on this great plain north of Addis Ababa, his father, Ras Michael, gathered an army to restore him to the throne. It was another medieval scene. The horsemen were dressed in the monkey skins of war, with Ras Michael at their head. On the other side, Ras Tafari's men gathered for battle in the same way. In Europe, the bloodiest of modern wars was being fought with tanks, machine guns, and poison gas. But here, the centuries rolled back as if to King Henry at Agincourt, or Richard losing his crown at Bosworth Field. Like Menelik's victory at Adowa, this battle of Ras Tafari for his crown has become one of the great subjects of Ethiopia's popular art. The battle lasted a full day, surging one way and then another. But in the end, the man who rode back to Addis Ababa in triumph was Ras Tafari. It was a victory that he still recalls as the turning point of his life. But almost immediately, he was embroiled in the outcome of the other war in Europe. At the Versailles Peace Conference, in their victory, the Allies again redrew the map of Africa. But once more, Ethiopia escaped. Playing off the great powers against each other, Ras Tafari kept his independence. Joining the new League of Nations, he put his faith in the latest post-war watchword, collective security. In such great company, one little country would surely be safe, for none would let another gobble it up. Instead, he hoped that all might compete in helping him to modernize his country and make it worthy of its place in the League. To extend his foreign contacts, he toured the European capitals. In London, the Times described his arrival as an historical event. In Stockholm, he met King Gustav, and the Swedes promised him doctors. In Brussels, he found financiers ready to invest in his country. The French were already in Ethiopia. They had completed a railway from the coast to Addis Ababa in 1918. It was Ethiopia's first physical link with the modern world, and it helped to establish Addis as a permanent center of Ethiopian government, as no capital had ever been before. But Tafari still needed all the foreign help he could get. Most of Ethiopia was still sunk in the Middle Ages, and Addis Ababa was still only a ramshackle place of tin roofs and open drains.
All right, you're listening to a special feature on His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie. And of course, we are celebrating the 86th anniversary of his coronation to the crown of Ethiopia when he was crowned King of Kings, Lord of Lords, conquering Lion of the tribe of Judah. Yeah, and these titles are real titles, you know. real titles. But we're going to take a break and we'll come back. We'll continue with that documentary.
Visit Mooney's Auto Parts, 37 Tate Street, Montego Bay, for all your auto parts for Honda, Suzuki, Toyota, Nissan, and Mitsubishi. We stock engine, transmission, front end, and body parts at the most affordable and competitive prices. We accept debit and credit cards. Open Monday to Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Telephone 952-0684. Mooney's Auto Parts. If we don't have it, we will get it.
He had to fight poverty and tradition, but he was still only regent, and his hands were still tied by his old enemies at court, who were once more plotting against him. It wasn't until 1930 that Rastafari won supreme power at last and ascended the throne when the Empress Zauditu died. Crowned emperor at last at the age of 38, Tafari took the royal name of Haile Selassie, meaning the Mighty Trinity. His coronation was attended by men of rank and circumstance from all over the world. The Duke of Gloucester went from Britain. France sent a field marshal. Italy, the heir to the throne. Governors of Africa's colonial territories came to salute the independent African king. His own people poured into Addis Ababa in thousands to pay homage to the new emperor. At this moment, Ethiopia seemed about to be the first country in black Africa to step hopefully into the modern world. Instead, the modern world marched almost at once into Ethiopia, far more brutally than before. Benito Mussolini, the Italian dictator, proclaimed he would create a new Roman Empire, and he aimed at the one place left for imperial conquest in Africa, Haile Selassie's Ethiopia. Mussolini's excuse was Ethiopia's backwardness, that same medievalism that Haile Selassie himself hoped to end. He told his soldiers they had a civilizing mission, but his ambitions dragged Haile Selassie straight into the 20th century's new barbarism. Hitler threatened the peace of Europe. As the Nazi troops marched, Western statesmen quailed at the thought of a new war.
All wars are horrible, and our experiences as they are horrible.
In the mouth of Ramsay MacDonald, Britain's Prime Minister, the age of appeasement was born. Its first sacrifice in the cause of peace in our time was to be the Emperor Haile Selassie. In Ethiopia, the Emperor could do no more than play for time against the Italian threat, winning the loyalty of the tribes and princes by a traditional mixture of prestige and bribery, and hoping that his old friends, Britain and France, would still come to his rescue. But Haile Selassie and his men were whistling in the dark. The Italian troops were already embarking, and Britain and France would do no more than proclaim an embargo on arms sales to both sides. For Italy, with her own arms, the embargo was a green light. For Ethiopia, it was a death sentence. But for Haile Selassie, the final betrayal came at the League of Nations. Pierre Laval, the French foreign minister, and Sir Samuel Hoare for Britain, proposed to hand part of Ethiopia to Mussolini. Appeasement had triumphed. Collective security was a myth. In the war that followed, Haile Selassie had no chance. Forty years earlier, Haile Selassie's father had helped Menelik to beat the Italians at Adwa. Now Mussolini's troops had their revenge. Within a month, Ethiopia's first capital at Aksum had fallen, and over 2,000 years of independence were nearly at an end. Abandoned by his international friends, Haile Selassie found even his own men unwilling to fight on. He had only a handful of trained troops. The rest were untrained tribal warriors, hopelessly outgunned. Before the Italian assault, the emperor's army disintegrated, and at Easter 1936, Haile Selassie left his men to make a pilgrimage to the rock churches of Lalibela and to pray for his country. His prayers were unanswered. A month later, it was all over. In 8 months of steady advance, the Italians had lost only a few hundred men. Haile Selassie had lost an empire. On the 2nd of May, his family took the train from Addis Ababa to Djibouti. On the 5th of May, Haile Selassie followed them. He left behind the agony of defeat to confront his betrayers at the League of Nations.
Ladies and gentlemen, the second speaker on the list is His Majesty Nicholas Haile Selassie.
He did so with a dignity that has become a legend.
Monsieur le Président, Monsieur le...
The jeers of fascists in the gallery did not stop him. I am here to claim justice, he said. What reply shall I take back to my people? There was no answer, and there could be none. The League was dead. So, said the Emperor, it is us today. It will be you tomorrow. Haile Selassie went into exile in Britain. He was 44, and it seemed then as if his life's work had ended before it had begun. He vanished in the gathering storm of war that his downfall had started. Hitler had already re-entered the Rhineland. Trier was soon occupied. Munich was to follow, then Czechoslovakia, and finally the German army marched into Poland. And at last the world woke up. Britain and France declared war on Hitler's Germany. The age of appeasement was over. But as Europe went to war, appeasement's first victim seemed more than ever forgotten. Only when the war widened still further was Haile Selassie remembered again. When Mussolini joined Hitler in 1940, the emperor automatically became Britain's ally, and his futile exile came to an end. Within weeks, Haile Selassie was back in Africa, waiting for the British to mount an invasion of his own country. The campaign was one of the swiftest and most successful of the war. In less than a year, the Italians were defeated, and Haile Selassie was on his way back home. He flew into Ethiopia from the Sudan, and while other troops fought their way to Addis Ababa from the coast, he returned by road through the mountains. Just above Addis Ababa, he stopped for a first look at his capital, 5 years to the day since he had left it. What one imperial power had put asunder, another had restored. The legend of Solomon and Sheba was rekindled. The Lion of Judah had returned. Ethiopia rejoiced, and so did Haile Selassie. For him, it was one of the greatest moments of his life, a chance to start again. "30 years later, in the grounds of his palace in Addis Ababa, where he takes his daily walk among the lions that symbolizes imperial power, he reflects now that at that moment of return he was already 50 and had accomplished little. The Italian improvements for him to build on, they'd only been there for 5 years, and they'd left things pretty much as before. There was no central administration, there certainly weren't any bright young graduates, there were no army officers, and there wasn't even a common language. Fundamentally, Haile Selassie was back with the same ramshackle empire he had won before, and whose primitive traditions he hadn't had a chance to scratch. When Haile Selassie returned, his empire had 20 million people, 100 different tribes, and 50 different languages, and was twice the size of France. It was a proud empire, but its 2,000 or 3,000 years of tradition underwrote poverty, disease, and ignorance. An empire where more than half the people were pagan or Muslim, yet were ruled by a Christian monarch, whose church was still the only source of unity. A secluded empire, where life had remained unchanged for centuries. An empire, in fact, as backward and conservative as anywhere in the world. There was no easy escape from the isolation and poverty of Haile Selassie's empire. There was no mineral wealth, no really modern economy of any kind. There weren't even any communications. The Italians had built a few roads, but the war had destroyed them again. And one of the first decisions the emperor had to make was whether he should rebuild the roads through these mountains. He decided he wouldn't, for the time being anyway. Instead, he put his faith in the air. With American help, he created a network of tiny airstrips that broke down the isolation of the interior for the first time.
All right, this is the Cutting Edge on IRE FM. This is I, Roger Concrete Hasfal, holding the fort for Mutabaruka tonight. And of course, we are here celebrating the 86th anniversary of the coronation of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie and Empress Mening. We're also celebrating Rastafari culture, philosophy and thought as well as heritage. So we have the final segment of this documentary on His Majesty, and we'll go to it now.
When the 1950s opened, Ethiopian Airlines were in business. It was Haile Selassie's first major accomplishment in modernizing his country. There was everything else still to be achieved. Yet at this moment, by a stroke of luck, Ethiopia's past for the first time came to the aid of the present and made Haile Selassie and his capital the focus of Africa's new hopes. As almost the only independent African ruler after the war, Haile Selassie provided a symbol of self-respect for black men just emerging from white rule. The wind of change had come to Africa. Recognizing the emperor's unique position, the United Nations chose Addis Ababa as its African headquarters, and he embarked on a new political career.
The age in which we live, Your Imperial Majesty, is an age of paradox.
In his brand new Africa Hall, Haile Selassie presided at innumerable meetings of his new revolutionary colleagues. He became the great African father figure, the great African peacemaker, in the Congo, in Biafra, in Morocco and Algeria. It was a strange apotheosis for the King of Kings. He didn't always succeed, but his voice commanded respect, because he alone in Africa had been both victim and victor in the struggle against colonial rule. He alone had been the first martyr of the old League of Nations and was now a founder and guide of the new United Nations. Seeing his influence in the new Africa, the world beat a path to his door. The Organization of African Unity followed the United Nations and set up shop in Addis Ababa. Diplomats and businessmen flocked in. Within a decade, the face of Addis Ababa was transformed. The signs of international affluence towered over the old open drains. With the bankers and diplomats came foreign money and foreign aid. There were new ports, new roads, new dams to be opened. America trained the emperor's army. Russia built his schools. Israel provided technicians. India supplied teachers. Britain brought doctors. France offered culture. Germany sent trade missions. Haile Selassie's old empire had become the new African showcase, and everyone wanted an exhibit there. Today, Haile Selassie is besieged by foreign delegations hoping to catch his ear. He balances these contemporary forces to strengthen his own independence as shrewdly as he juggled half a century ago with the rival tribes and princes in his old fight for power. One day it may be a Japanese delegation. The next day a mission from Maoist China. It doesn't matter what political persuasion they are, they all see Haile Selassie as an essential link to the rest of Africa. At home or abroad, half his life seems consumed with ceremonial state visits. Some of them purely political, some of them simply a tribute to his personal stature. Even with Italy, he's made friends again. On a state visit to Rome, 30 years after Mussolini's troops had been driven from his country. At home, he seems all-powerful, adding to the natural mystery of a divine monarchy the artificial cult of personality. His name is everywhere. His presence seems all-pervading. His word seems law. His ministers are overshadowed by him, and his government is run by him. His palace is surrounded by all the machinery of a modern administration. But even his prime minister brings the important decisions back to him. In his old age, it looks as if Haile Selassie has routed all his enemies at last, to emerge supreme, as if the all-wise and benevolent Lion of Judah has prevailed. Yet the one thing Haile Selassie has not prevailed over is his own country. Outside Addis Ababa, the traditional Ethiopian ways have hardly changed at all. The emperor's writ runs only as far as his governors can ride. Sometimes that may not be far enough. Less than a third of Haile Selassie's people live within a day's ride of any sort of road. It's over 60 years since Haile Selassie in his youth started his career as governor for the Emperor Menelik in this very province. And the system's no different for the man who represents him now. Every time the governor rides out into the farther reaches of his province, he gets a royal welcome. Like Haile Selassie in the old days, the governor still needs guards to protect him, servants to tend him, even interpreters to translate for him, because hardly anybody in the remoter provinces speaks the language of the emperor's government. It's government in the medieval style, and modern Addis Ababa seems very far away. Even the bigger villages, where all the men of the community are summoned by the emperor's commissioner to uncover a criminal. It's the village elders who make the investigation. If they can't agree on a culprit, every man present will suffer his share of a collective punishment. If the finger points to one man, he can expect short shrift. In every village marketplace, the public gallows still waits for the murderer or the rebel. But what's law for the poor in Haile Selassie's empire is less often law for the rich. The Ethiopian parliament is the emperor's own creation, a little nudge of his people towards constitutional government. But it's twice refused to pass the emperor's own land reform law, because its members won't give away their own privileges. As the years go by, the emperor's step gets slower. He may live in some splendor himself, but he knows the Ethiopian peasant is still as poor as any in Africa. Yet he's paralyzed by the traditions he's inherited from 2,000 years ago. Landlords and princes dominate his parliament and hold the countryside in fee. The peasants own nothing, and at harvest time the landlords and their bailiffs come to demand their share of the crop. The landlords may not be as powerful as they used to be, but like the barons of feudal England, they're still strong enough sometimes to hold even the monarch at bay, still strong enough to hold the people in complete subservience. Biggest of all the landlords is the Ethiopian Church. History has made it inseparable from the empire, and now, as powerful as the great monastic orders of medieval Europe, it dominates the life of the Christian highlands. The Church is the cross that is also the nation's salvation, both a reactionary burden and a civilizing influence. Its priests may be ignorant, but they're usually the only people for miles around who can read or write. Its schools are pathetic, but until Haile Selassie's reign, few other schools existed. 90% of his people remained totally illiterate. Nearly half the population of Ethiopia now is under the age of 15. And for Haile Selassie, their education has always been an obsession. He's taken personal charge of the Ministry of Education, sought teachers and money for more schools from half the countries in the world, and turned one of his palaces into a university. He's directly responsible for whatever schooling these youngsters get. But like everywhere else, the more they have, the more they want. School strikes and revolutionary slogans take command. And Haile Selassie's efforts are dismissed by the young as mere failure and repression. The educated middle-aged are rebellious too. They owe their privileges to the emperor as much as to anyone, but they whisper their discontent in the posh bars of Addis every night and can't wait for the old man to go. But the old man's still there, as shrewd and ruthless as ever. He still knows how to balance one force against another, playing off traditional resentments against novel discontents. Some of the latest challenges to Haile Selassie's rule combine the old and the new Ethiopian divisions of discontents. Down near the coast in Eritrea, where the Italians had their empire for half a century, there's a popular liberation front now fighting for independence from Haile Selassie and joining the old battle of Islam against Christianity with a new revolutionary movement against an ancient monarchy. The emperor can send his army to deal with that, but it hasn't always been easy for him to deal with his army. His soldiers now are a far cry from the barefoot rabble that Mussolini's men destroyed nearly 40 years ago, and farther still from the medieval cavalry that won him his crown 20 years before that. But only 10 years ago, some of his soldiers tried to throw him out, and very nearly succeeded. It could happen again. The classic 20th century military coup d'etat against an aging ruler. Haile Selassie is a lonely man now. His wife, 2 sons, a daughter are all dead, and though others remain to keep him company now and then, the essential solitude of his life on the tightrope of power must grow more oppressive every year. On one side, there's still the old Ethiopian world of feudal power and tradition. On the other, there's the new challenge of his own reforms, the educated youngsters and the modern army officers who want the world and would like it now. They're the upper and nether millstones which have ground many a good man exceeding small, especially in this century. To have survived them for the better part of 55 years in power is something unequaled by any ruler in the world today. No wonder the Lion of Judah has become one of the living legends of our time.
How excellent is thy name, thou hast set thy glory above the heavens. For out of the mouths of babes and suckles are thou ordained strength to still enemies and their offenser. With thy new name, O Jah Rastafari.
Yeah, man. The great sounds there of Ras, Michael, and the sons of Negus, new name Jah Rastafari. So you just heard a documentary on His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie. And it was quite revealing, quite enlightening. And it shows you the importance of this man in world history. Many of you, a lot of us, must learn something from that tonight. And why we as Rastafari and why we as Pan-Africanists hail this little man, Emperor Haile Selassie. So we're joining now Master Elliot. And she was at the 12 tribes of Israel. They had their occasion earlier this evening. She's going to tell us a little about that. Greetings, Marcia. How are you doing?
Finally, greetings.
Yeah, man. Good to have you. All right.
Yes,
yeah, there was an event at Hope Road tonight. Just
yes,
backtrack.
It's an event that is kind of, wrapping up. They have Warrior King on stage now. He's wrapping up, and then after that, the 12 tribe might do some selections until 12, because this is Kingston, and the 12 tribes stuck by the rule to finish at 12. Even if the show doesn't finish at 12, as the show done before 12, music will be playing, by the 12 tribe sound, but most of the artists, or all of the artists, have already performed.
All right, so the occasion itself, tell us a little about it. We know you had a stage show and so, but provide some details as to the event itself.
All right. Every year, you see, every year there's a 2-day event. The first day, the November 1st, is the celebration Earth Day of our past leader, Dr. Vernon Canton, that we call Brother Gad. So last night we had a party. And when you have a party, party, free food, free entrance, free everything. And it was really nice last night. And that went well. It always goes well because the members, respect the leader and they come out and show their love. And we wear the color red because red is from the tribe of Gad. And Gad, I couldn't say Gad is November because November, the latter part of November, it can go into another tribe. But it depends on when the moon came out. So it is a red month now.
All right, so you say you're wrapping up now. So after tonight, that's it.
Yeah, that's it. It's a 2-day event. Yeah, because Bingy, different Bingy, they have lights. They call it 9 lights, 7 lights, whatever. Bingies will go on until a couple of days. But 12 Tribe, every year is just a 2-day event.
So you say you had some artists. Just remind us of those who passed through.
Okay, well, the first artist was a sister named Empress Faith, which is a member of the 12 Tribe of Israel. She did her little rendition, which was very nice. I mean, coming from 12 Tribe, a young sister going into the faith, I call her Empress Faith. She really did a good job of her songs and, very nice. And then Israel's Voice, also another long-time member. And he has been doing little shows here and there. I even went to South Africa and saw his video there, doing well there. And, oh boy, he had the people eating out of his hands. And then you had Asante Amen. You know about Asante Amen, right? And his favorite song, Only Rastafari.
Yeah.
Well, he had a crowd going just the same. And it's running smooth, that's how it is. So now Warrior King is on, and he did all of his regular songs that we know, the popular songs, and he's doing some more now. The crowd is nice. It's a beautiful crowd.
Yeah, Warrior King will close the show.
Yes, I'm closing the performance part in terms of single artists, but the band is going to do maybe a few little items and then seal up.
That's the 12 Tribes band?
Yeah, 12 Tribe band.
And the 12 Tribes sound do its thing too?
Eh?
And the 12 Tribes sound doing its thing too?
Right, their music. What happens, even though we get up to 12, what we do, I think they should have asked for 2, but they didn't. They should let them know special this occasion is, but they went to the 12 o'clock. So at 12 o'clock, we're just going to play low. I think, in your little yard, and then people hang around and maybe play domino, buy off the food that leave, and just enjoy each other. Cause sometimes these are the only times that we see each other,
Yes, I know. It's the time when you really reflect, socialize, and, look forward as well.
When some of us really and truly see each other, so we enjoy sitting and talking after,
Yeah, I know the police you soon start to see the blue light come and a flash, so you have to play your sound low.
Right, you know the thing as well. But, I'm really glad we get this opportunity to talk about it because right now there's a lot of things going on and which is thanks that we have a full house. The big going on and they had something up in the hills up by Kelly's father's home that wrapped up already and one's left from there and came here and people are going to leave from here and go to Bingy.
Yeah, man.
So that's just how it is,
All right, nice. Nice.
But the 12 Tribe of Israel started in 1968. I just want to know that.
Yeah, man.
Like myself, I came in as a schoolgirl,
Yeah.
If I not to tell lies, then I'm going to leave.
Yes, we know it go. We know it go. We know it go.
Right, so, we just holding the faith same way and just giving thanks,
Yeah, we were the black sheep of the family.
Yes, right. I was. I'm from the tribe of Benjamin, so I was a real black sheep.
I see. You see that?
Yes.
Nice. All right.
So I don't know if there's anything more you need to ask.
Man. No, you can't just anything else additional you want to say before we wrap up?
Yeah, well, just to tell once that we're taking in members now on a Friday. You come with a picture. And they'll give you a dues book if you want to be a member of the 12 Tribe of Israel. We still have our monthly meetings where we talk about our finances, and then we have our private meetings. Only members come to the private meetings, but other people can come to the other meetings. So we're still doing the regular things that we normally do over the years, So it's ongoing. So anybody who wants to be a member, they can come here on a Friday and write up them name and they'll tell them what else to do.
All right, bless up yourself, man. Give thanks for the link. Late do it be, but give thanks.
Yeah, very much. All right.
Yeah,
and as I said, everything went well. Give thanks again and let's prepare us.
All right, man.
There, all right?
Yeah, man. I will link up again, all right?
Yes.
All right, bless up yourself there. Marcia Elliott there. She's at the event at the 12 Tribes on Hope Road. 12 Tribes there, Hope Road, 81 to 83. And of course, they are one of the organizations, celebrating today the 86th anniversary of His Majesty Emperor Selassie. And of course, the cutting edge tonight. We are celebrating we're also celebrating Rastafari culture, music, thought, philosophy, and heritage.
Join us with respect for our national anthem. Let us stand and defend this one. peace and love. Thank you.
Eternal Father, bless our land, guide us with thy mighty hand, keep us free from evil powers, do our life through countless hours, to our leaders, great defenders, grant true wisdom from above. Justice, truth, be ours forever. Jamaica, land we love. Jamaica, 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 land we
All right, yeah, in tune to the cutting edge. I, Roger Concrete, Hasfal, they hold the fort for Muta tonight. And, you know, we're celebrating the 86th anniversary of His Majesty, Emperor Selassie. And we had some features earlier. We're still making some linkages with the respective bingy houses hosting celebrations tonight. Some of them go on right throughout the week. Yeah. And, you know, this is a annual thing. And, you know, we have to pay homage and pay our role and our part in highlighting the Rastafari celebrations this time of the year. I want you look the officers them on the north-south highway, you know. Yeah, man. Taylor, I think a Taylor him name, and him second. Yeah, the two of them out there. Yeah, I keep the fort out there, and you know. Stop and I on my way back from Kingston tonight, and you know, reason with them and them say, all right, go on, man, you're good youth, you know. So heal them up. You know, them would have vexed if I never big them up. So big up the peace officers them on the road right now, you know. I'll go on keep the fort. So yeah, what day tomorrow too, you know. With the stepping razor, different program, different thought, different things. So, you know, we just have to just go and play our role tonight. We'll soon take your calls them. Of course, you know the regular numbers them. We can reason a little. And anything where bother you. So just stay tuned, but we'll still make some more linkages with some houses who are having the celebrations tonight. So just go and keep it locked, and we'll soon make another link. I think we're gonna link Profile or one of them shortly from now, because they are having something up there up that side too. I'm gonna join Prince Fagan, you know. Priest Fagan actually. And as we have been island hopping, you know, Tracy. Island hopping. We were at Bull Bay one time. We'll link up Bull Bay, then we'll go Pit 4, we'll go Old Hope Road, up a 12 tribe. And now we are go up a Blue Mountain. We are going to join Priest Fagan. And of course, this is the Emperor Selassie School of Vision and Bible Study Prophecy and Sabbath Worship. They are celebrating the coronation anniversary as well. And we have Priest Fagan up that side. Greetings. Greetings, brother.
Eli,
how you doing?
Well, actually, man, it's a bit nice here, but I'm glad for this opportunity, for this invitation to us expressing the relevance and significance of this 86th coronation of the Emperor as King of Kings and Lord of Lords.
All right, so just talk to us about now, you know, your activities up there.
Well, actually, like I said, today, effectually speaking, is only a commemoration of the crowning of Emperor Selassie, 2nd of November 1930. Now, from School of Vision point of view, though some people may not want to hear it, this is a prophetical reflection. For example, Psalm 132, verse 11, the Lord have sworn in truth unto David, he will not turn from it. Of the fruit of thy body, according to the flesh, I will sit upon the throne.
So we see that Yeshua, I must say with his Jesus Christ, was a crown of thorn in the crucifixion. So we know as Rastafari worship him in the characteristic as the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, and that is the prerogative of School of Vision, why we find it so significant at this time to praise him continuously as the only, we say only to underline that there is no other crown, King of Kings and Lord of Lords other than Emperor Selassie I.
All right, so I want you to tell me now, the activities that have been taking place since last night into today and into tonight.
All right, the ancient art of Beneding, you would have lit the fire from 12 o'clock into even this point here now. School of Vision now, we actually restart our worship and praise from about 6 o'clock up. Until even now we are still chanting in our being gates to praise the Emperor. And maybe in another half an hour we will take a respite, a little break for something to eat, and we will reconstitute until tomorrow daybreak in the worship and praise of Haile Selassie I. So right now the drums are chanting. I don't know if you can hear it because I step away a little distance so as not to disturb our conversation. But we are now in the drumming and the dancing and the praising which we constitute as the worshiping of the King.
Yeah, so your activities, what, go until tomorrow, or how long will it run for?
Until tomorrow, anytime between 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, we will see our worship and praise.
What, 7 o'clock in the morning or in the evening?
Tomorrow morning we will see, and then we will reconvene tomorrow night again until actually we go right into the Sabbath. Because actually we are worshipping in a Trinitarian way. We say Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for the Trinity of the crowning, and that will bring us into Saturday, which we continue the sabbatical worship and praise. And that is from School of Vision point of view.
And tell us about the significance from your point of view on this coronation celebration.
Well, sir, I'm very thankful because, you see, first of all, we want to establish a black Christ according to the scripture. Jeremiah 8 verse 21, boldly I am black. Daniel 7 verse 9, woolly hair. Revelation 1 verse 14 and 15, descriptively, woolly hair, red eyes, and brown skin. So we, the Rastas, have always known that it was a black Christ. So we say unto the world, 2,000 years ago, it was a crown of thorn and a mockery. Now we are here today to uphold the Trinitarian crown of Haile Selassie. First crown 100 years ago would be the 27th of September, the crowning of Rastafari. 1928, the crowning of the same man now as King Rastafari, which is the increase of the crown. And incidentally, today now we mark the third crowning, which is the 2nd of November 1930. And what is so unique from School of Vision point of view, and this is not for racial superiority or any inferiority, it is just a racial fact that in 1930, actually in the diaspora, all nations down here, black people were in chains. In Ethiopia, as you might be aware, continentally, Africa was in bondage except in 2 nations, Ethiopia, Far East, and Liberia. So we counted very significant during that time of our enslavement that one man was crowned King of Kings and Lord over all lords. And that was in Addis Ababa, witnessed by more than 72 nations. So we are here today to uphold the Emperor as the living Christ. That is our message.
All right, give thanks. Any final word you want part with us?
Well, actually, what we would like the world to know is that time is running out and it's time for them now to be more sensitized as to the mission and the purpose of the Rastafarians. That's all.
All right, give a thanks, brother. And keep the fire burning, and we talk again.
Thank you, sir, also for the invitation.
Yeah, man, not a problem. Priest Pagan there, man, up in the Blue Mountains of St. Andrew. You know Blue Mountains. You can't see Blue Mountains from all... You know, so you can't see Blue Mountain from all the highway. Not so, yeah, man. You can't see the Blue Mountain peak when you end up on the highway. But, you know, especially upon a clear day. So, yeah, up there, celebrating the coronation anniversary. You know, it's only black people have a problem when we talk about black Christ. It's a thing, you know. I don't know, but you see, black people, why? I don't know. Black people have they hold on dearly to something that enslaved them for centuries. Yet still when we recognize that we are worshipping in our own image and likeness, a black Christ is the same black people who have a problem with it. I don't know, but Rastafari play an important role in the history of the world. And the Rastafari movement in started in Jamaica, has mushroomed into a universal movement now. Started by when Leonard Howell came back to Jamaica, circulating pictures of His Imperial Majesty, telling us that there's a black king crown. We not have to worship, and we not have to praise, and we not have to bow down to the white kingdom at the time, because we have our own black king. And of course, our own black people say mad. Our own black people persecute him. Our own black people despise him, lock him up in an asylum. He was on places like where? Coke Methodist Church, footstep preaching Rastafari, telling the people about Rastafari, the crowning. Run him, you have to go St. Thomas. So, St. Thomas is a very critical place, existence and history, same St. Thomas, because over there, so Leonard will go really establish the Rastafari movement. Yeah, Trinityville and them place there preach Rastafari and disseminate the pictures of the crowning, because them time the only information you have from them time was through the colonial powers. So you never really have certain information at the time, but he had the information. He come back and tell Jamaicans that there was a king crown. And of course, the story going face hell till eventually him get the same place on him Pinnacle now. And Pinnacle, we know that how that story go. There are two raids, one in 1944 when the government at the time said, when them investigate and find out, them say, but the people them all right. Leave the people them alone. It was documented that the government said to leave them. But there was another raid in 1954. That was a raid where mash up Pinnacle. And Pinnacle was the harvest ground, the original harvest ground for the Rastafari movement. And of course, the struggles of Pinnacle today. So, it's long time. It's long time the Rastafari and all them early pioneers in the Rastafari movement. We pay homage to them tonight as we celebrate Rastafari culture. This is the cutting edge on IRI FM.
Rastafari, Emperor Haile Selassie. Oh, clap your hands.
Come on, this is the cutting edge, man. You know what that tune name? That tune name, Ital Correction. It's bad, no lie? Yeah, man. What then? 90 and the Observer, some real long time Rastafari chant them there, I have to play it again, trust me.
Well, brethren, he's all the right.
Great one himself, Profile.
Yeah. I'm probably Selassie the first,
Selassie, man. What go on?
Yeah, they are all the Irish,
Yes, man. I can feel it.
The fire burning,
I feel it, man.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
So tell us what is happening up so now. Tell us, give us paint a picture for us now.
Well, as usual, the family gather, chanting, giving ideas to the king and the empress at this moment, the crown in Iowa. So it's nothing new to the family, Because I would say any family who don't have a Rasta that's in them family, that family is a barren family.
Yeah.
So every family have a Rasta in it, and every Rasta supposed to know where they're supposed to be at this moment.
Right.
Either you're amongst your family, or they have some gathering, giving praises to the king and the empress at this moment,
Yeah.
Just find yourself at the right place, at the closest place, because this Iowa is a very special Iowa to I and I, because I and I even celebrate some of the days then where those days His Majesty never really give I and I take them, but it's when it comes to the coronation of His Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie, like the crowning, that day when himself must be celebrated,
And also FIFA, which is the Ethiopian Liberation Day and All African Liberation Day. His Majesty speak of those 3 days. So must be celebrated. Not for the other days that we die and I take them on, you know. Like birthday and Christmas and all them things. Today is a beautiful day. I, as an individual, and the family who is here also. You know, and give thanks, you know, for the one them known and about who see this day as a special day. So I and I together and give praises to the Most High.
Yeah, we know it's a usual annual thing for you. So how long your thing usually go for? Yeah, I mean, up so.
Well, you know, no, I don't have no idea where I feel, you know, because I don't know I've feeling ideas, because I don't feel ideas. So if the family decides to stay another day or 2 or 3, I and I would just see it up, because we don't really have planned a day. Because you see them set the system that I and I have so much slavery going on in our family that man have to go work and man have to this and man have to that. So, and I don't gather until the one them decide to track. And I look forward to traveling and maybe a Segway, but seal it up in the strong and same way, you know? Because I visit every house. It's not every house visit I, but I visit every house.
Yeah, so you're going to move for the various houses. Then you're going to have continuous thing for the rest of the week.
Yes, where and where I can reach at the moment, you know.
Yeah.
Yes, because so, I really do some work on the tabernacle since I tried, you know. So tabernacle not really feel up, but it's not tabernacle and I really praise, you know.
Right.
Even if I and I have no tabernacle and I go said here because I had tried Rastafari, I tried before tabernacle exists.
See it.
You know?
See it.
And I really tabernacle. Anywhere one day and gather 2 or 3 giving praises to the King. You know? It's a joy.
Yeah. So I hear the harps in the background.
Yeah, man, I you know, say all this interview and thing and them where I don't really stop to do them thing in the fire. I just stop to the respect.
I know.
I don't want to know when I chant no one. You know, this is like a disturbance to I man meditation chatting up, but I just you know. You know, I don't feel when it comes to ISIS, you know. But true, I know sometimes I want to still like to hear what go on.
Right.
And we have more ones who are going to hold it said here.
Right.
But I don't really start giving up ISIS to really talk to know someone about this chat. But
yeah.
We give thanks we still can do it still.
Yeah,
you know?
man. We just make the linkages at the various places then we have things tonight. In celebration of the coronation, and you are one of the stop them. So we give thanks for the link still, because we know you have to go back.
Yeah, man, I will give thanks for the items, you know, we just want them to know, say, it's an Iowa where I and I to look into as a family.
Yes.
And who can reach us and make sure we should near his family, you know, and see it up and make that day be a blessed day for the item, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, my father, Selassie, I see it up in the confusion. So anyway, it's the confusion, make sure you run, you know. So anyway, it's the love and the joy and the happiness amongst I and I self. Just find yourself right there, so, you know, make the I self higher because, you know, Babylon I work overtime to distract I and to keep I and I away from coming together, because they know when we come together as one, it's better them get weak, so they do anything to keep I and I apart, any kind of distraction. So we have to just find the love within I and I self, and just know that I and I are going to see it up and give up ISIS, not just for tonight, but for always, you know?
Yes, I.
I'm going to give thanks to the eyes still, you know, as I virgin.
Yes, I.
You know, because to be Rastafari, you have to hear the King, you know? And
exactly.
When you hear the King, is Rastafari. And who is that to tell a man, say, not Rastafari when you move on to the King, you know?
Exactly. So we said.
So it's a joy and a love. And I just want them to know that they are go up and quenchabilize the same way. And whosoever will can chat, because even if I want here now, And people try, you know, so the longer you may have been the chant, the stronger we get. So the stronger we get stronger. So
yes,
when a man can just come in, so you will come get a piece of the medicine, you know?
Yes, we know it, go, man.
You know, it's life, you know?
Yes,
Yeah.
All right,
know?
give her thanks, you know, Profi. Give her thanks,
yeah,
you know?
man, and give thanks to them, you know? Because man feel, you know, and you see two man feel wood and stone. Because enough one like Rasta, you know?
That's true, man.
And then turn on him radio, it's Rasta in him house. Him turn off him radio and turn on him television and it's Rasta in the film, you know?
Yeah.
So then you can't hide again.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't like Rasta, but wood and stone make Rasta there right near your house.
Exactly.
So you have to love I and live
I.
and eat I and die.
Ah.
You know?
All right,
so
bless yourself, man.
Perfect love to the family.
Yeah.
And give thanks to everyone. And we're still there. And whosoever can shut up said we and catch the morning eyes the same way. Because, you know, you don't have to come for the whole day, you know. Because a minute with far is better than 1,000 here in Babylon. So if a man gets 1 minute to just pass through and just give up his eyes and shut out, it's a joy.
Yeah, man. Come for the little strength, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, man.
You know, we have to strengthen each other within this time.
Yeah, man. That's true, man.
Yeah, man.
All right.
So you know it goes. So you hear the chanting in the background.
Yeah.
And I have a whole for the harp said here. So
Yeah.
you know it goes.
We know it go, man. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
All right. Give thanks, man, and bless up yourself, man.
Rastafari.
Selassie,
Perfect love to the family, you know, who I give a listening ears, you know, and just stay strong and stay alive. And the longest liver will tell and the longest liver will inherit, you know? So
Yeah.
A life, we say, good over evil every time.
Yeah,
And save the children, because we don't like what go on in Jamaica, you know?
True. That's one thing we need to
When you
tackle.
see them kill children, you know, so we're gone.
Yeah, man. That's true,
So,
man.
you know, so we have to work harder towards the unity and to save our children, because without the children, we are nothing. Because the next generation will come and go, what if we destroy them, we are going to reach.
Yeah, you can't destroy the succeeding generation.
Yes,
Problem,
you
though.
know, so,
Problem
you
for the
know,
earth.
We want to save the children, you know, but we want to find more love amongst the ones, them. And I don't know what go on still within the one, you know, but I know it's a plot. That's all I know, it's a plot. I don't know where it come from, but we cannot kill our children, babies, and things. That is worse than the storm we got 85.
Yeah.
So we just are allowed more love, more unity, more strength, more life, stay alive, and make the love spread round and around. Rastafari, perfect love.
Yield, man. Yield. All right.
Yeah, and yes, sir, perfect.
All right. Profile there, you know. Yeah, man. Go on with them celebrations up a Great Pond there right now. You hear the harp in the background. So we continue to celebrate Rastafari culture, Rastafari heritage, Rastafari philosophy, Rastafari talk, and Rastafari thought. On this, the 86th anniversary of the coronation of His Majesty Emperor Selassie, Cutting Edge, featuring Rocha Concrete Hasfal here holding the fort for Muta. So, we're still island hopping. Greetings. Greetings.
Yes, greetings.
Who this? Barrington Road?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, man. Welcome.
Yeah, good thanks.
Yeah, and it's Earth Nation in association with Skyline Levels Culture Center. You're hosting a reasoning and groundation on this, the 86th anniversary celebration. You want to provide us with some details?
Yes, well, it went all right. We had all the presenters and discussion. About 70 to 100 people was there, you know what I mean? Chanting and so on. But it is to be continued.
Tell us about some of the presenters, no?
Yes, well, first of all, we had a youth, Peter, and of course, for giving a youth perspective and also critique, etc. But not understanding, probably feeling a bit entitled, not understanding the great struggle and persecution that the Rasta generation before
or 2 generations before went through to accomplish that he can even have this platform to speak on. Then, where the next individual speaker was Sister Arlene Mackenzie, who got educated in between Jamaica and England, London. They spoke on the economic benefits. She's involved in tourism, the Rasta village, etc., and also her teaching background, the teaching experience. And then there was Ras Manga on health and how we're dealing with the different things even that the government sanction, etc., in the bread and the other things, that keep on poisoning us by these foods, and the different alternatives that we have to really combat these things. Of course, there was Miguel Lawn from the legal perspective and all the different things that we have accomplished legally over the years, just getting our culture recognized, and single-handedly to and not even having any support. The only coalition of support that we have had, and it was international, was on the ganja issue.
Yeah, man, tell us about that now. Speak about that specifically, that ganja issue thing.
Yes. Well, the ganja issue is to really go into further because, we're not speaking with one voice, and there are different committees that, let's say, we liaison with the government, and instead of Rasta heading these committees or be the foreground, we should have a minister of ganja, like Peter Touch said, and we're concurring now. So on, we're being treated as a minority in an affair that is really our cultural right and African majority right, but we have a minority mindset because of the colonial imposition, of British and colonial laws. So we have to have a further analysis and meeting of the minds on the whole ganja issue, how to organize around it, because people are still being arrested for ganja.
Yes, as was the case yesterday. Yes, as was yesterday in Montego Bay, where the man them was heading towards them celebration, and the police stopped them and take all the weed from them. I mean,
Yes, that incident was highlighted.
Yeah.
Which is very nonsensical.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's
and what makes it so even more nonsensical is that the law was amended to facilitate these things, these events in the Rastafari celebration and culture, so,
Yes.
Yeah.
But we're dealing with it, people who just want the Rasta advice, and they are not Rastas. They're basically house slaves and oppressors who are trying to accommodate us because they see of the economic reality or where they're on the wrong foot. They might be charged for genocide in the very near future. So, besides the ganja and the Miguel Lawn, and the legal perspective, there's Sister Mitzi and the woman's perspective and so on, and being involved, and an incident which show you the mindset and the prejudice, because we have a missionary school backed by the denomination. She applied for a job and they asked her if she's not going to convert the children to Rastafari, when we are really a liberty and a culture. And what she says, just love, she's dealing with it then. I mean, get converted to what she is by love, then that's okay.
Well, they're showing the religious bigotry too, you know.
Yeah.
And Jalani Naya from the University of the West Indies, the Rasta Studies Department, who gave us a lot of statistics and analysis of Rastafari as we stand in the world, worldwide, etc. And last but not least, Bongo Jerry Small, who clarified that Rasta is, how it started, is a liberation struggle. Yeah, I mean, he gave us the history, the true histrionics of Rasta, and that Manley and Buster are usurpers, you know. Buster was a loan shark and Manley a little lawyer, you know, that's all they were involved in while Marcus Garvey was doing the work and establishing the foundation out there, and even before, and then after that, Rasta too. So they were the colonial knights in white shining armor coming to save the remnant of the British Empire.
Yeah,
you know, it was a good learning experience, and we hope to continue it in the future.
Yes.
Yeah, as a discussion forum, and also analyzing our way forward.
Yeah, man. All right. Good speaking with you. And, of course, this is a continuation. The struggle continues, and we'll definitely, in time and space, link up again.
Most definitely. And in the future, we hope to have Muta as a presenter.
Yeah, man. You can't talk to him, man. He's not here now, you know. So when him come, you can make that link there with him.
Yeah, man.
All
Most
right.
definitely. And give thanks.
All right, sir.
All right.
Yeah. Hill.
Yeah, brother.
Rastafari,
Selassie forevermore.
Yeah.
Yes, brother, I have a thing with me that when me really call you upon still, you know, because right now I think I go on where far as me see to come like enough people eyes not open to what I go on, you know.
Yeah.
You see, next year, 2017, the mark of the beast are going to take over in America. Every American citizen next year have to have the mark of the beast, the microchip.
Okay, you see that in our vision?
Eh?
You see that in our vision?
If you go up on the internet right now, you'll find if you type in Luminati 666, it's dead. See, some of those enough people now really check on that. Some of you want make enough highlight enough of them, you know, make them know. See, that's how the problem has started, you know, next year, you know.
Okay, so
yeah, man.
So you have to just open up here and see what go on and take it, eh?
You see, because for the brethren who, you know, say, enough Rastafari out there, maybe not have access to the internet. Some of them maybe don't know where to type in to find all of these information. So more make them know, so they must be aware and know, so next year are the thing.
Yeah, so as long as Rastafari come together and straighten up one another, them think they can't affect us still.
No, but here what the thing now. You see, not for we, you know, we're strong now. But when the time comes, we fall weak.
Yeah.
You see, because, you know, going to be no better roses, you know, Rasta, because put World War I and World War II together, you know, go wicked like this, you know.
Oh, so you predict a World War next year?
No, World War.
Oh.
You know, I tell you, say the chaos will go take Earth, because of the new world order, you know, America will control everything, you know.
Yeah, that's why black people must wake up and realize black people must wake up. Because I know black people don't realize we don't have a black kingdom like how the Chinaman have him China kingdom and the Indian have him Indian kingdom. And as long as we continue to look away from that, we are always at the bottom of the pile and I follow where the white man are going and where I say and where I do and where I impose, you know. But that's no ego. Yeah.
Yeah, because you see what happened now. They're instilling a way after slavery, from slavery, you know, to hate with brother and with sister and love with enemy.
But it worse now.
You see?
It worse now.
And yeah, because even I watch you right now, a black man will kill you with one with a white person and you don't even know who the person is. You see, because I want a greenback dollar. You see, so As me I say, we just want to know, so the man them to know, so them to straighten up themselves, open up there and look out for this, you know, because, I don't know, game thing, you know, because if you look down in the Middle East, you know, them tell you about Arab Spring, but in the White House, you know what they call Arab Spring in the White House? Eh?
No, man, wrap up now. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, man, in the White House, they call it the Middle East Operation.
All right, sir.
Because you sit down in the Middle East, they claim that the man them down there are dictators, so they can't talk to them, they can't control them and tell them when to sit and when to walk. So they might try to get out them and then put in some other man where they can just tell them what to do. You see,
regular thing that where America going on with still. But give thanks still.
Yes, I am.
All right, bless.
All right, bless.
Bless.
Morning, Raptor.
Greetings. Hello?
Aye,
Selassie. What go on? Hello? Hello? Like you have a bad line, you know. Like greetings. Greetings.
Yeah, man. Good morning.
Morning, sir.
Yeah, Roger Hasfal. Just here on a bridge in a talk about the microchip a while ago. Just not really on the scissors thing more on talk about. Just the microchip, I say something on still.
Say, talk your talk, man.
Yeah, I mean, I say, people are talking about microchip, but the microchip already depend we, you know, we already get it, you know.
Oh, we already get it.
It's the cell phone, man. Remember, saying, you know, when you have a smartphone, you know, and set the thing where the phone can track you, right? Because if you don't try to download certain things and you don't have the tracker on in terms of location, you can't download certain things, you know.
So let me ask you, is it a good or a bad thing?
Well, I wouldn't see it as good to a point. But my thing is we already get it.
Yeah, so may I ask you if the whole smartphone thing that all we have now is a good or a bad thing?
I'm not say the phone bad, you know, but I say in terms of the chip, we already get it where it it can track way. That is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Because so is that good or bad? That may I ask you?
I don't see it as something good.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that may I ask you, man.
That's not to me. I'm not trying to say it is something good, you know.
Okay.
But me just say it is already on us.
Yeah, me hear you. And that's why I ask you that question there. So you can answer me. So I'm good.
Okay. But people even understand, so we already have it. We already get it. We already get it. And if you notice, remember the definition for the small SIM card, you know, is the micro SIM card, you know. That's the definition for the little one, you know.
So what we are going to do then? What we are going to do?
We can't escape it.
So what that mean for us, humanity, as a people? What that mean? Since we can't escape certain things and what I mean, what we are going to do?
I think we can't answer that one there. Just
Oh. So yeah, I have to ask them questions. They still, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
Because if you follow, if you're into the Garvey philosophy and Rastafari philosophy, Garvey say we are all entitled to the benefits of civilization. So anything that is benefiting humanity and anything that is there to uplift and to aid us, make the next step for the next generation. We're entitled to it, you know. So I just don't. That's why sometimes we need clarification as to these things. I mean, we have our own theories, you know, and our own ideas of how we arrive at certain things in the world now.
Okay.
But we still have to remember, say, at the end of the day, civilization exists. And we are all entitled to civilization. You understand?
Yeah, man, understand. Hallelujah, still.
So, yeah, but everybody have them theories still, and I mean, if there's a theory where you believe in and you're firm in your conviction with us, so everybody have everyone have something with them to say or want to say,
Yeah.
So I that.
Yeah.
Give thanks, man. Give thanks for your call.
All right, cool.
Yeah, man. Cutting edge, still taking your calls here. Yeah, we'll go until 2 o'clock, so, you can take up that phone. Call us, make a reason. Greetings. Hello? Turn off your radio, man. Turn off your radio and listen to the phone. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, man, you need to turn off your radio.
Hello?
Turn off your radio and listen to the phone.
Hello?
Turn off your radio and listen to the phone.
Greetings.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, most I listen when you talk about oil start up Rastafari.
No, hold on. I'm saying oil was the first man who started distribute Selassie pictures in Jamaica.
Yeah, well, is it not just try to bring something to your attention? Because not taking anything away from oil. Because
it's a fact that we said, though, right?
Just hear what I say, man.
That's why you know why I established that is a fact.
Right, it's a fact.
Okay, all right.
That he used to preach that Rasta is the return Christ.
Yeah.
Remember, he was a part of the Garvey movement,
Yes.
So him actually said that Rastafari is the return Christ.
Right.
And that became the religion.
Yes.
Started by oil, and him break off from Garvey movement.
Yes.
Because
them they start stone him and all him something and run him and all him something too.
Right. So him actually, but knowing about that Rastafari was going to crown, Garvey didn't know about that from all the while him and oil did a walk.
Yeah.
Because Garvey did have the Negro world where he was print, him got print.
Right, and the Ethiopians, them did in New York and them something with them, did do them thing in New York, and where Garvey was.
Right, so it was both of them together, but then him go out and said, "Is return Christ," and him start.
There's a picture with him and Garvey,
Right.
Yeah, man.
So taking nothing away from oil, but Garvey didn't know, and I established because I talk about self-esteem and self-respect and able to manage your own affairs. And here comes a black king now we could do all of these things. So it was an uplift to the whole black race.
Right.
So it's just that Garvey never see religion as such when he talk about Rastafari.
Yeah, because even when the thing that go on at Ethiopia, I think Garvey they try to have a talk with Selassie, but it just never materialized. It never happened.
Right. But at the two man, we have to just big them up because a black struggle, black liberation struggle.
True, man.
And both of them play them.
Them are martyrs in our existence, man.
In our history, right?
Yeah.
We have to big them up.
Sure.
So give thanks. It's just that me do that.
Yeah, man. Give thanks for your call, man.
Yeah.
You're blessed. Greetings.
Yo.
Yeah.
Roger.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
Where you say? Talk.
Boy, me I tell you, boy, Jah live, I and I live, Roger, So, when you never talk about them, give Rasta something, we go and give it to Rasta, Roger.
Where you say?
We hear them for the news, give Rasta some benefit, something. For the news last week. They went Rasta and get here yet.
No, I not hear that story there. What you
hear?
What
you hear?
What you hear? Because I'm not hear. What you hear?
Me like him say them about
give Rasta some benefit, but give them back them something like a car guard or something.
Oh.
But me I say, wouldn't mind it because black people are a bird, you know. Because he Rasta ball plate and ball love and pigeon mean peace, you know, man. So if Rasta get that, you know.
Okay.
All Janko, I know a giant, you know, man. Like Janko mean giant, you know, man. You see me, I say, you know, Muta when I drive Volvo.
Yeah.
Roger.
What happened? Yeah, so what happened?
That I vulture, you know.
What vulture?
The vulture, he Volvo mean vulture, you know. Like a Janko, you know.
Oh, alright.
And me go, you know, one house I set me around come on the top, the man we have fought, but me go set me around about 6 Volvo man have in a yard park, you know.
Oh.
And that the man they, after Selassie I did. And that the man they come as the next Selassie, you know. Come in a reason with Muta, tell Muta say they have one Jesus and one Selassie. You see me I say?
Alright, sir. Give thanks.
You see what me I say, you see?
Give thanks.
Selassie I will not guard over America, you know.
Yeah, give thanks.
Yeah, Roger.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, a Mandingo.
Mandingo, where you say?
What go on. Yeah, man, everything is good. Everything is good. This, yeah, man, this Thursday, the 3rd of November 2016. So, as we know, yesterday was the 86th anniversary of the crowning of Rastafari Makanen as His Imperial Majesty.
Yeah, and the program
Selassie the First.
And the program was dedicated to that.
Yes, you know. So, yeah, as a matter of fact, I did a show last night on Conscious Radio because, you know, to mark the 86th anniversary too, you know, and so on. But I heard a brother earlier talking about all of us have the microchip. But that is not literally so that all of us have the microchip. But we know and you know too with technology that when you have the smartphones, a person's location can be found once you have a smartphone on you, you know, because the tracking device, you know. But what we must bear in mind, as Marcus Garvey said, in Philosophy and Opinions and otherwise, that we as Africans must master science and technology.
Exactly.
Because if we don't master science and technology, we will be exterminated, or we will be the slaves of those races who master science and technology. So technology is not a thing for us to be afraid of. Yes, my brother.
And him say we are all entitled to the benefits of civilization.
Precisely. And especially so when we Africans were the first people to have civilizations, because civilization really means living in cities, you know.
Yeah.
That's literally what it means, living in cities. And we created the first cities. We are the first engineers and so on. So technology, science is not something that we must be afraid of. I mean, for example, at Kingston Technical High School that I went to at 82 Hanover Street in the 60s, Marcus Garvey Jr., the son, was my physics teacher.
See that?
You know, exactly. So, you know, and later on he became an electrical engineer also in the States and so on. So it is important for we as Africans to master science and technology so that we can use science and technology to help in our liberation and to maintain our independence.
So we help our family, we help ourselves, we help our country, and we help our race.
Exactly. Straight up. And the next brother that you're talking about, Leonard Percival Howell, who was from Clarendon, near Crooked River, Red Ground Way in Clarendon, Jamaica. Of course, he was originally a member of the UNIA and ACL, Marcus Garvey's organization, in the States. And it is after the coronation in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, that Howell started to show pictures and saying that this is the king, this is a black man king and that type of thing. But as we know, Marcus Garvey's attitude to religion was that religion, like everything else, must be used in the service of the liberation of our African people. But he never ever
believe that any man or woman was God, you know. We know that, you know, and so on. But, and of course, Marcus Garvey founded the largest Pan-Africanist organization in history. And with Haile Selassie coming to the throne, I mean, he was co-regent with Emperor Menelik, the second daughter, Zaduto.
Right.
But he was co-regent with her from 1916 to 1930. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the designated successor of Emperor Menelik II was his grandson, Lijiasu.
Right.
But he was deposed, overthrown.
We play a feature earlier tonight on the whole history of that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, he was overthrown because of his Muslim sympathies. Yes. Muslim thing. And Ethiopia as a Christian state, Coptic state, couldn't tolerate that and that type of thing. So, you know,
they have to get him out.
The coronation, yes, they have to get him out. Because the Arab Muslims were always trying to conquer Aksum, Abyssinia for centuries. You know what I mean? That was a continuous thing. And it is significant that an event like yesterday, that we as Africans, we commemorate things that are memorable in our history. Right. And we take the best in our past and go forward and throw the worst that is in our past away. So it's a shifting system to use that which is best in our past as Africans and get rid of that which is worse in our past as Africans, so that the movement is always positive. So, Brother Roger, keep on doing the good work.
Yeah,
and I would tell people that they should read the autobiography of Haile Selassie.
Right.
They should also read Marcus Garvey's Philosophy and Opinions, which gives a Black Prince solution for the African race.
Right.
And also go on YouTube and watch Dr. Marcus Garvey Jr. and the Arab slave trade, that gives a history of the African race with respect to European Christians, Arab Muslims, and Semitic Jews. So keep on doing the good work, my brother, and I'll be listening still till the end of the show.
Give thanks, Mandingo, as usual, man.
Every time, Roger.
Mandingo
Keep
from
on doing the good work.
there. Yeah.
All right. Love.
Bless up yourself, man. All right, Mandingo.
All right.
Yeah, greetings, Roger. Give thanks and praises, man. Give thanks to get through to you.
Yeah, man. Give thanks.
And this occasion and this time, you know?
Right.
Coronation, celebration.
Yeah.
I hope you hear me clearly because I'm driving. I shouldn't be driving. I got to pull over and talk to you.
Yeah, man. I hear you, man.
All right. No, because of my principle. My reason for calling has to do with driving. Some driving issues may have. It's causing me a bit of problem. It's driving on the left and driving and people sitting in the right lane. And, you know, I think that we should abide by law. Because law is not something, you know, we have to say, boy, everything and fight against the law. Because law can actually bring about the civilization that we need.
Yeah.
So Jamaica say drive on the left and pass on the right. But you find say a man, if he's in Montego Bay and he come off a Long Hill, as he reaching a Redden, he dropping at the right lane and then driving at the right lane go straight to Montego Bay.
You mean for the dual carriage?
Undertake.
You mean for the dual carriage?
And you not hear me I know coming up on the Long Hill.
Hello? Okay, I keep in and out. You still there? Like him gone. Greetings.
Greetings, brother.
Yeah, man.
This is something dear to our Rastafari heart, you know.
Yeah.
The whole part, the youth, them will get damaged.
Yeah, true. Yeah, not good. Not good.
No.
Terrible things happen in our society now, man. Terrible. Every day we get up and I talk about 80. And 80 this and 80 that. Some wickedness when I say I go on in Jamaica, that them things they not
terrible, man. No, I wonder say if
I tell you, yeah.
The man that do them things, if they work with the dead house, cause so much dead house they want to place. All the nice town where people them walk, sometimes the place smell mucky.
Yeah.
We I say what I need say. The man that do them things, if they work with the dead house, cause so much dead house they want to place. All the nice town where people them walk, sometimes the place smell mucky. Yeah. We I say what I need say. The man that do them things, if they work with the dead house, cause so much dead house they want to place. take some investigation towards them to, cause the man they really got them people dead, Money is all about money making,
Sure.
It's so now we still, but right now we can't trust no one. Power. The terrible thing going on, man. We need to stop. We need to put a stop into it, man. So much dead house about the place. Every day I want to go. Something like it, I get worse than the rum bar them now. So we need to put a stop into it, man. We need to find out in every angle. And I leave no unturned. Find out these things. What do them something there? What cause it? How people get so alienated in other place. It's serious. Cause now we're not safe, Both big liquor.
Yeah.
From certain things,
Sure.
You see, we're looking at things.
Yeah, man.
Well, it get worse and worse.
Serious thing, man.
And I look up into them, especially for them innocent one. Yeah, that can be or a future the next day and the next day. We need to find out, man. We need to, like I said, we need to really and truly put our heads at everything and find out these things and look through them. I'm going to have to look to, Roger.
Yeah, man, we have to look at ourselves, man. We can't go on so. We have to look at ourselves. Every day we get up and we talk still. But you see?
Yeah.
One day, every day the bucket go in the bottom or drop out, you see?
Right.
And you see?
How some people talk, them not sincere, I see all I want, you them have sense, and them say, and hear the politician them come for radio and talk a whole lie and story when we take no work out. So them are one of the things we cause the pressure upon the youth, them, And them supposed to be honest and truthful to the nation, They're not supposed to be the bickering and every day them are bick about this and about that, and when we don't see no farmer help. I just fear ones who really know them are put in a society and position and leave out youth them need chances that them are going to come and take over the people, them are going to come with the said lion story and the said bickering and them things so. Needs to have some better man or woman or when we think it's not serious thing. See, guys, one more thing again.
Yeah.
It's a digital now. Digital.
What did you say to know?
You feel better, Mark. I hear now. You see if you have a man, you minutes on your phone. Them just take away minutes. That's in one day. Them will give over, And think you're scamming, And we have to work hard for money, Them take away minutes like a film. Money, I do it,
Well, them say Jamaica talk the most, and the phone company them exploit that.
I don't know if you do that, man.
Well.
Find out if you could deal with the thing, man. Stay with the minutes, man. Because all for people, 1,000 of people, them take the minutes.
Why? Sometimes it look like as the phone start ring, it start to eat the credit.
Yeah. What about international minutes, If you have international minutes on your phone, and let you buy it too.
Why? I'm convinced that when the phone start ring, man. At that time, it start eat the credit. When it start ring, if you that all go in a voicemail, man.
Yeah, so they need to set a better stance with people, my man. Everybody come and pressure the people, them pressure. So, I mean, if you have some chance, man, and looking at themselves and know, say, watch out. Them not have to do that. Let people them stay with them minutes until they want to buy some more. And they have to work hard, see it.
Yeah, man, we get you. Give thanks. Bless, yeah?
Yeah, man.
Greetings.
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
As a black people, we must manifest love.
True.
Love lives and reigneth within the heart of all flesh.
You can talk up a little louder.
Love lives and reigneth within the heart of all flesh.
Sin.
And as the chosen people of the Almighty, this is what we need to portray. He is love. We must manifest love on earth. He proved to us that He is love. He gave us the earth in which we as flesh, the creation of Him, we must manifest Him. He is love. We must manifest Him.
All right.
Until the earth understand and manifest love before we can see Him. Good morning.
Give thanks. Yeah, man. Magic that they come in with. They come in with something unique. A big box. It look like a boom box.
On the rivers, Babylon, we right and I sat down and wept. But I remember Holy Mount Zion.